Hey guys, welcome back to the Calibrate Tools and DIY channel. Yes, it's a Sunday, and I'm on here today because I missed last week, and I promised you guys that I would get on before the week's end. Okay, so I'm just trying to keep my word here. I had a lot of things going on last week, wasn't able to make the live, but hopefully I can make up for it with this one. Okay, so the title of this live is "This Skilled Trade Shortage Could Cripple the Economy." What skill trades do you think that is, guys? Okay, tell me in the chat. And I know nobody's really in here right now, but you can tell me in the replay. What skill trade shortage do you think is on the brink of collapse right now? I wouldn't say collapse. I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but this is very serious. And I'm gonna give you a hint. It's the transportation industry. All right, mechanics to be more precise. Can you believe there's a shortage of mechanics out there? And do you know what that could mean for us, right? It's not just the construction workers or the electricians, the plumbers, and all those people. It's the actual mechanics, right? Who would have thought, right? With all the cars that are on the roads today, and we all know that they need repairs, you would think that mechanics' job is recession-proof. But for some reason, there's not a lot of mechanics being I would say there's not a lot of mechanics coming online to replace the older mechanics that are retiring. So let's dive into this topic and let's see if we can kind of figure out why this is happening, okay? Let's see here. Let's dive into my research. All right, it says, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the automotive repair industry needs to hire about 75,000 new mechanics, new technicians. Okay, something fell here. They need to hire about 75,000 new technicians every year just to keep pace with the people that are leaving the field, right? Retiring, aging out, or whatever, even to keep pace with retirements. And that's a good point to really ponder on, because when you talk about replacing, aging out workers, retirements have to be paid, right? So if they're not being replaced, then retirements can be jeopardized, could be compromised by this shortage. I didn't even think of that, right? How many of you made that connection? So it says that there's a deficit of about 25,000 to 35,000 workers every single year. What does that mean? Well, in practical terms, right? If mechanics are not being replaced, that means longer wait times, right? Longer wait times, higher costs, and quality concerns. I think that third one, quality concerns, is probably one of the biggest issues that we need to address. Because if you have a stressed out workforce, stressed out labor force, because there's not enough workers, it's almost like, you have this big factory and you don't have enough workers to get the work done. And you have a small amount of workers, just, all the workers on their shoulders, they're going to be stressed out, right? Because you keep piling all this work on, and you're not hiring enough people to, equitably distribute the work, so it can run like a well-oiled machine. So on a larger scale, that's what's happening with mechanics in the automotive repair industry. So yeah, this is an issue here. I really didn't think this industry would be hit by the skilled trade shortage, and they say it's getting worse. Okay, it says the average age of the automotive technician, the mechanic, is about 45 years old. So in their 40s, right? And it says within the next decade, a massive wave of retirements will hit the industry, meaning that these 40-year-olds are going to age out. They're going to retire. And if you don't address the crisis, the shortage, right, they're going to be looking at a shortage of about 150,000 mechanics in about 10 years, 2035. So people's retirements are going to be in jeopardy, and it's going to be a lot of stress going forward. And why is this happening? Once again, like I always say, it's a perception problem when it comes to the trades. Okay, these blue collar jobs is not as prestigious, and that in the age of, I was thinking about it, in the age of the internet, where everybody's flashy, everybody's making $1 million a month. Whatever, right? Who's thinking about being a mechanic, right? So the young people are not looking at that, where these these blue collar jobs, being a mechanic, as something glamorous, something, where they could show off to their friends or whatever. Because let's be honest, they're not going to be making that kind of money starting out, especially if they're new. So it's kind of a microwave society right now. And as good as the internet is, as far as disseminating information and how it's changed our lives, this is the dark side to it, right? It's been taken over by all kinds of different personalities that can really sway the masses, right? And especially when it comes to young people and desiring things fast, desiring money fast, because all they see is fast money on the internet. And like I said, these blue collar jobs definitely don't offer that to them. So yeah, it's a perception problem, right? Let's see here. American society has decided that working with your hands was less valuable, in this quote unquote, okay, than working with your mind. We created a hierarchy where a college degree became the only acceptable path to success, and trades like automotive repair were seen as a fallback type of career, okay, for people who couldn't make it in college, right? So yeah, the specter of that stigma is still upon us. And now it's having real world consequences, right? Real world consequences. And we see it in not just other trades, but now we see it in the transportation industry, which is crazy. Where are we heading here? Okay. Automotive technicians aren't just mechanics, okay? They're highly skilled diagnostic specialists working with some of the most advanced technology in existence. Yeah, you get on the internet and you see these people they're flaunting their supercars or whatever expensive car they need to get you to buy their product, but not understanding that that supercar or that expensive car you're flaunting is actually a marvel of ingenuity, right? It's not just a money-making prop. It's a marvel of ingenuity. And the tradesmen, the automotive technicians and engineers that put these vehicles together, these vehicles are just advanced as any other type of tech. I think it would you can say that a car is one of the most ubiquitous, meaning it's everywhere, right? It's one of the most ubiquitous pieces of technology out there, and we take it for granted, the skills and intelligence it needs to put these things together, right? And unless you really have an interest in cars and fixing them and building them or whatever, you're not going to see that. And that's, a small minority of people really are interested in the actual building of a car and maintenance of a car and enhancement of the vehicles, right? And so, like I said, the average young person not thinking about that. They're like, man, mechanic, I don't want to get greasy and dirty and be up there for, fixing things. So they're thinking about, hey, how can I go be a day trader, or, how can I, get this money on the internet or some other kind of way? Because I guess in the young man's mind, he's like, man, I can't go to the average young lady today and say I'm a mechanic. How would I look compared to my friend over there who's a I don't know, an internet sensation, and they're making all this money. So yeah, so unfortunately, the internet has produced this type of mentality, and the trades have suffered, I think, even more now with the internet than they have before, in terms of having that stigma of not being glamorous enough, right? So now we see it's coming to a head now, where we have this shortage, and it's going to have real world effects on everybody, because like I said, you're going to have longer wait times. I think the wait times have increased about, according to the research, about 30 to 50%. The cost is you're going to have a higher cost, and then you're going to have quality control issues where, cars are not going to be or vehicles are not going to be as, I don't know, as sturdy as before, because you have a stressed out workforce. And that goes with any trade that's out there. You can, like I said, it can be an electrician or something like that, or any trade where the workforce is stressed out because of the shortage. So there has to be something done about this. So let's see here. What's the cost benefit analysis, right? It says, when you're 18 years old, deciding your future, you look at the numbers. Okay, going to a 2-year automotive technology program might cost about 20 grand to 40 grand. Okay, Now that's no small change. I get it, right? Then you start as an entry level technician making maybe 35 to 45 grand a year. Your friends who went to college are now entering fields where the starting salary looks better on paper. It looks better on paper, right? Yes, they might have 50 grand to 100 grand in student debt, right? That's what they're not telling you. Okay. It might take them years to earn what a master technician makes, but at 18, those nuances aren't that obvious. Basically, what it's saying is that, on paper, it looks like your friend that went to the 4-year university and they're looking to get out to make maybe 100 grand a year. That's if they get the job. But they're not telling you about that 100 grand a year that they may make, or 50 to 100 grand is going toward all the debt that they incurred going to school, right? So you may pay 40, 50 grand with no debt, right? Or at least with half of the debt that they have, get rid of your debt much quicker than they do, and still, have a good income. And not only that, there's no ceiling on what you can make, especially if you start your own enterprise, right? And this is but as a young person, as an 18-year-old, whatever, you're not seeing that. You're looking at just from a purely surface perspective. I'm going to make this, they're going to make that. So the hell with that. I'm going this way, right? Not understanding what's on the back end, what you're going to have to be dealing with. Okay. Now, here's another pet peeve a lot of people have, and I would say it's a worthy grievance. I understand, right? That, hey, the physical demands, right? The working conditions. Okay. Being a mechanic can be very hard on the body. It can be very physically demanding. Okay. It can be very uncomfortable. And a lot of people don't want to go into that kind of environment to work, right? Unless you really have a love for that. You don't want to get into a blue collar job that's going to be very physically demanding. So, in today's world, young folks, they grew up in a climate controlled environment, right? And they're not used to sweating or being in very uncomfortable conditions coming up. So why would they go into a career that's going to put more stress on them, not only financially in their heads, but physically, right? Who wants to lay concrete? Who wants to lift heavy objects all the time? Who wants to dig? Who wants to do that, right? Not understanding that, you don't have to stay in that type of world forever, right? So if you have a forward-thinking mind, then you would say, okay, maybe I have to do that for a couple of years, and then I graduate onto something that's less stressful on my body, right? Maybe I become a manager. Maybe I can own my own business where I have workers underneath me, where I don't have to shoulder the burden of all that stuff like I did before. They're not thinking long term. So when you don't think long term, you tend to make rash decisions where you end up regretting it later. Okay. Yes, the trades are very physically demanding. A lot of them are, but it doesn't have to stay that way, right? As you move along in your career, whatever trade that is, you can learn to delegate, right? Unless you love the physical work, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. They got guys that's been in a trade for a long time, and they love the physical. The physical work doesn't bother them, and they can, and then at some point they move on from that. So, but that is like I said, it's a legitimate grievance that doesn't help the cause when it comes to being a mechanic or any kind of blue collar work. Okay, so that's some of the reasons that's causing this shortage, right? And it's age old reasons that this has been happening. But we gotta do something about this, guys, because hey, this whole cause that I push is all about the benefits of it. And I have a long-term vision myself to build communities ourselves, to become more self-sufficient and not as dependent on others to make it, keep your community going, right? Others to come in and help you out. You got to become self-sufficient like we were in the past. And, specifically the African-American community, where they're only I think in my last live, I think they're only like 5 to 9% of the trades. They only comprise 5 to 9% of the trades, which is an abysmal number. Okay, that's a very saddening statistic, being that they were the backbone of at least being literal backbones of building this country, and they only represent maybe 5 to 9% of the trade. So, yeah, I have a bone to pick with the way things are, a personal bone to pick. So that's why I push it a lot, right? Because even if everybody becomes a white collar worker, which won't happen because you need the trades to even support the white collar industries, right? You need the trades, right? And so I would love that number to rise much higher than 5 to 9%. Yeah, I'd be happy if that happened. At least maybe. Hey, I'm not mad if it gets to like 30 to 40%. You know what I'm saying? But there are other barriers that we have to deal with when it comes to that. All right. So what else, guys? What else is going on with the with some of this here? This mechanic shortage. All right. So there are other factors. Let's talk about them. Okay. The electric vehicle transition. Okay. EVs, electric vehicles everywhere. Not to mention driverless vehicles. Like, I'm in a city where I don't know if you live in a city, because it's not everywhere. I know that, but especially where I am over here in LA, you see not only a bunch of electric vehicles, you also see a bunch of driverless vehicles, autonomous vehicles all over the place. Okay. So even on the autonomous scale, that's not going to help the cause either, right? That's not going to help the cause either, because there's not enough skilled workers to be able to fix and repair electric vehicles, right? Or autonomous vehicles, right? So I'm sure the skills in that area are not up to par, and there's a shortage of technicians in that area. But that's also an opportunity. That's also an opportunity as well. Okay. All I'm saying is that the more technology advances and the more young people shy away from these trades, the gap is just going to get wider and wider. And then it's just going to make it worse and worse. Okay. So the goal is just to bridge that gap by bringing awareness to this. Okay. Modern vehicles are according to what this says there, modern vehicles are increasingly proprietary. You can't work on a Tesla the same way you work on a Ford, which isn't the same way as working on a BMW. Each manufacturer has its own diagnostic tools, training programs, and certification requirements. This fragmentation makes it harder for independent shops to compete and makes the training burdens on technicians even heavier. And a technician now needs to be familiar with multiple manufacturer systems, each with its own requirements and quirks. That's a big deal right there, guys, okay? And I know why they do it, right? Because they don't want just anybody being able to work on their car. You know, they have their own parts, they have their own tools that doesn't work with any other car but theirs, because everybody's trying to keep their intellectual property intact, right? They're trying to keep their patent safe. But once again, that's adding more of a burden, like it says, to an already debilitating number of technicians that are out there right now. They have to know more, right? They have to know more than the average mechanic, say, from maybe 50 years ago. Because you got all, like I said, a car, right? Some of these cars I just listed, especially Teslas and all that stuff. The technology is so much more advanced than a 20-year-old car, 50-year-old car. That it's almost like going to college, right? It's almost like getting a degree to know this stuff. And I would say it's just as intellectually heavy to have to know how to fix some of these modern vehicles today. And so that could be a hell of a burden on a technician in a field where there's not enough technicians to go around. But once again, I always try to look at the bright side of things. It's all, it's a big opportunity, right? The more you know, the more valuable you become, and the more money, the more that impacts your income. Okay, so that's how I would look at it. I'd say, oh, there's a shortage. Okay, if I go in that field and I become the best, or I learn as much as I can about all different types of vehicles, then nobody can touch me, right? There's only a few people like me out there, which means I can write my own ticket. So that's how I would look at that. Okay. All right. So there's an ongoing fight between independent shops and vehicle owners, okay, about whether they should have access to the same diagnostic information and tools as dealerships. So manufacturers have increasingly locked down their systems, claiming safety, security, and concerns. This uncertainty makes the field less attractive. Why invest in becoming an independent technician if you might not have access to the information you need to do your job? So right there, guys, you see that if you want to use the term greediness or fear, which turns into greediness, can affect your industry in a negative way, right? So the manufacturers, they don't want to divulge their secrets, their trade secrets, their intellectual property to independent technicians, independent mechanics, because they just don't trust them. So I guess, so they keep all that information locked down. Only dealerships have access to it. Okay. That's just going to make it harder for everybody overall, in my opinion, right? Because now mechanics or aspiring mechanics, they're gonna look at the industry and say, I may want to be an independent mechanic, and if I can't fix people's cars because I'm independent, why should I even get into that field, right? Why should I even have to fight for this type of knowledge because I want to be independent? I don't necessarily want to work for a dealership. I don't want to be an employee. I want to start my own thing. But because these manufacturers don't trust me for whatever reason, right? They don't want me to give my secrets away to another brand or whatever. Now everybody's so tight, and I'm out here and I can't get business because I don't know how to fix people's cars. So, nobody's gonna, who's going to want to have to deal with that, right? So that's called the right to repair, right? And that's a battle that's going on between independent technicians and mechanics and dealers, right? Manufacturers. So, just taking a peek behind the curtain of what's going on in the industry and what's causing this shortage to happen. And it's very interesting to find all the nuances that cause that stuff. So, what was the pandemic's impact on this topic that we're discussing? Okay. Well, let's see. Older technicians retired early, right? During the pandemic, they got out of the field. They're like, I'm not dealing with this. Trade schools shut down. They reduced or they reduced their capacity, right? At the same time, with people avoiding public transportation, vehicle ownership and usage increased, driving up demand for repairs. Okay, so right now we're still kind of recovering from all of that. We're just a year or two out of it. And so, yeah, all those things I just listed has affected or are part of the cause of this shortage. Okay, so what do you do about it, right? Why talk about a bunch of problems and not try to give a solution? Well, once again, guys, like I always say, since I push the trades, you got to change the narrative. You got to change the whole perception of what the trades are. And like I said, it's all about, letting people know, letting younger folks know, the fresh blood know, hey, listen, the opportunity's there. And sometimes it's just best to compare, right? Sometimes this is what's going to happen if you get a college degree. This is what could possibly happen. You're going to be saddled with all this debt, right? Yeah, you may possibly, I'm knocking all kinds of things around today. You may possibly get a job, and I say possibly, right? But you may not, right? And guess what you're left with? You're left with all that debt, okay? And if you're not wise enough to be strategic about what you pursue in a 4-year path, college degree path, then you're just wasting your time, right? You got to know exactly what you want, right? Now, when it comes to like doctors and lawyers and stuff like that, engineers and things like that, where you need to go to a 4-year university or something like that, I get it, right? but you better, I mean, you better know that's what you want to do. Okay, you better know that's what you want to do. Otherwise, you're wasting your money, uh, everybody's money, really, not just your parents' money. Um, you better know what you want to do. Otherwise, just go ahead and get a skill, right? Nobody said you can't go back to school or be a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that. We need people like that. We need people in all fields. All right. But I think we're suffering from people not knowing what they want to do and just want to get out of the house. And parents sending their kids off to school just to send them and not really understanding the wider impact on the economy. And just the stigma of what we call the trades, and the shortages that we see in them, because everybody wants to be the next O.J. Simpson lawyer or whatever. It's just everything's kind of the priority is kind of skewed, and so we need to kind of correct that, and that's what I'm here for. That's what my channel for. That's what these lives are for, and the topics I talk about on these lives. So yeah, we just got to change the narrative. Now more on the industry side, right? You got to start paying these people what they're worth, right? You got to provide better compensation and stop working them to death under very strenuous conditions. That's not going to help. Who wants to do that, right? Even I don't necessarily want to do that, right? But if the wages if the wages reflect the work that somebody's going to put in, the investment of themselves that they're going to put into that career, then people will be more attracted to it, right? They're going to be more attracted to it. So that's one thing. And then you need to what are we talking about here? What else? Manufacturers and large repair chains need to invest in the workforce pipeline. This means they got to fund the programs themselves, offer scholarships, create paid internships, partner with the schools. I think some of these trade schools, they already have that going on. They set their students up to get jobs right out of it, or just have a better path to work than just throwing them out there. Okay, but that needs to be beefed up. Okay, because we're talking about what the infrastructure of this whole economy is built on, right? And we tend to forget that. It's always whatever's on the bottom that gets taken for granted. And when that starts crumbling, like what we see in these skilled trade shortages, then everybody wants to panic and cry about it, right? Well, you should have been beefing it up or keeping it secure in the first place, because everything rests on that, right? Like I said, this AI stuff, this internet stuff, everything that is in the white collar world, in the digital world, depends on infrastructure that's built by tradespeople. Okay, so the transportation industry is no different, right? And without the transportation industry, like, I've been in the trucking industry for a long time. Okay, and without truckers, man, what do you have, right? Like, nothing's gonna get anywhere. Okay, without ships on the ocean, that's part of the transportation industry too. The shipping industry, which is trucking industry is part of the shipping industry. Uber, right? Lyft, all these rideshare companies, that's part of the transportation industry, right? If there's not enough mechanics to fix these vehicles, it's gonna be a worldwide impact, right? So, education. It says we need more pathways into the profession. High school automotive programs with industry certifications, paid apprenticeships, income share agreements for training, partnerships between the community colleges and employers, and online learning components that make training more accessible and affordable. Okay. I love the part about the online learning here, because I'm big into that. So guys, you get the point, all right? There's always gonna, it's different things that we don't really think about unless you're really thinking about it, doing lives on this kind of stuff, that you don't see, that's behind the curtain, that's causes things to happen. And then if you don't address it, then and that's on both sides as well, right? It's not just about people pushing young people away from blue collar work into 4-year degrees and all that stuff, college and white collar world. It's not just about that. Everybody can be faulted in this situation. Even the trades themselves can be faulted. Like I said, if you're not compensating your workers, right, who's going to want to work for you? Okay, let's see. So anyway, guys, that's what's happening with mechanics. Okay, transportation industry could definitely cripple the economy if it's not bolstered. And well, you can only hope for the best, right? Anyway, guys, have a good one. I'll see you in the next one.